Well, my dear Boolahs, welcome back to Krown's Crypto Cave. Wish you a happy and healthy start to your new week on a Monday morning from a very bright and sunny Helsinki, Finland. As always, I would like to wish you the best, and the happiest because, well, right now is the best time more than ever for something like that. Anyways, we have plenty to talk about on Bitcoin's price action. With the inaction that we saw essentially from the weekend session, there is some clarity actually being shown on the more medium and long-term picture here. And I want to follow up on yesterday's short-term analysis as well, as we actually did hit the downside target down to 8,900. I think I was saying like 8,950 yesterday. And now that leads us into the actual trading week as CMEs are open once again. And we get ready for perhaps some actual resolution, of which I am more than excited for. Anyways, what else should I say? Yes, all of the programs are on sale for the next less than whatever the timer says right here. And minus 1 second now. And I should always say that definitely watch the videos that accompany these programs. They're going to explain it in depth on who they're for, who they're not for, and how to make the most out of them. As always, and I know that I probably sound like a fucking broken record at this point, but if you don't have enough time, then that's probably a good way to disqualify yourself right off the bat, as these are, especially the TA program and the options program, are very long programs. But to briefly explain them, the TA program obviously just going to be with regards to technical analysis and trading, and is essentially what most people are probably looking for, as it's a complete program from start to finish with not just, learning technical analysis, but also how to apply it into an actual trading plan, which again is, that program in particular is actually almost about 40 hours, I believe. And that means that it's going to take at least 40 hours to get through it once. And then you'll probably want to watch it a few more times, because that's how it's essentially designed over time. And that time span can typically take, from what I've seen, a year to a year and a half. Some people a little bit on the faster end, about 6 months. Now, the Neophyte program is a good introductory program. If you're a complete newbie, completely green, still got the cherry, that would be a good one. However, if you've already been in the markets for 6 months or more, you're probably above the level of content in that program. It's really meant as like an actual beginner's program, and then the options program is like a much more advanced one, humongous learning curve. And while options are the bread and butter of my game, and I don't really think I'd be that great of a trader without them, or maybe even a profitable trader at all. No, I think I could still make it work. But options, of course, much more in depth and takes longer, especially considering that you need to really have a good base in some of the other tools, like an actual trading plan with just spot price action. Of course, we also have the subscriptions as well with the Jewel, most notably, and we do have a discount for those who want to commit to a 3-month plan. And then we also have our lovely Mornfall, who has his PineScript Mastery program, which will teach you how to actually code your own indicators, if that is so what you desire. What else do I want to say? Yeah, for the people in the Jewel, or the people who are even interested about the Jewel, by the way, there is a new channel in the link to the description that'll actually go over the Jewel signals each and every week for the Jewel members who are actually in the program. You're going to get that content, obviously, the day that it's released, or the second that it's released, more accurately said. But for the people who are just interested in it, but don't necessarily have it, or maybe unsure, then we release that about a week after it's released to the members, and you're more than welcome to view it. Anyways, let's check out the Krown Chain application, of which we still pretty much see all the same reads that we see across the board, except for Bitcoin dominance coming down a little bit more, which is very interesting here. So I do think that it's a good time to check out altcoins, actually. Now, there is a really interesting dynamic with the way that markets typically move, and we've seen this in Bitcoin before, we've seen this in traditional markets before, and I think we'll spend a little bit of time talking about it today, because it is relevant. And essentially what maybe I should actually get into the analysis first. Yeah, let's get into the analysis first, and then we'll go over that. All right, so let's go over here, starting off with CMEs. This is actually the 4-hour total time frame. I wanted to follow up from yesterday's analysis on this one, or I guess this past week's analysis of this one, because we have officially confirmed the death cross as of the open that we saw very late last night on Sunday at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. However, because it is a holiday weekend with the 4th of July going on, I should say that the timing of this right now is kind of bizarre. As you probably noticed, CME price action has not moved at all. There's just weird opening and closing times when you do come into holiday weekends, but I imagine that maybe in like a few hours, we should probably see it trading again. unless if it's like an actual bad data feed with TradingView, which I do not believe that it is. I think it's just weird timing. So looking at this right here, I look at the 4-hour death cross to play out as long as we are below, especially the 21 exponential moving average, and for a more conservative long term is the wrong word, but like an efficacious look at this, meaning that the cross is still the main thing likely to play out as long as we're below the 200 exponential moving average, which is right around about 90 to 80 region. And keep in mind that CMEs do have about a $50 premium on price action from what we saw on closure last week. So that'd be, a spot price action probably somewhere around 9,200 to 9,250-ish region, of which we'll very naturally see that that's going to line up with a few other things. But I want to get through this one first. Anyway, so looking at the 4-hour right here, obviously it is in a downtrend, and you can see that Bitcoin is putting in a series of lows right around this 90.75 marker right here, which does offer up a nice little, well, I guess I already have it plotted in. Ha, nice one. All right, cool. That's good old TA stuff. Sometimes it works. And we have a declining tops coming in from our last few highs, something like this. And what is that making? Well, that's essentially making a descending triangle, of course. And while it doesn't necessarily say that we're going to break down, well, first off, it doesn't necessarily say that we're going to 100% break down. I've seen every fucking pattern break out the way that it's technically not supposed to, but it offers up a statistical edge in that direction. In this case right here, if we do see a 4-hour delta closure, especially on CMEs below about 90.50 to 90.35 region, I would constitute that as broken, and I would be looking for the next level to be hit, which is down around about 8,700, 8,750 if you're looking at CMEs. So that would, again, correlate to about 8,700 on spot price action, which is actually where I do think Bitcoin's probably headed down towards this week, especially as long as we're below about 9,200. Pressure is to the downside, and the trend is down, and momentum oscillators are down, and now moving averages are starting to really switch around here. Now, 4-hour Stokes, I did just say momentum oscillators are down. Obviously, they're technically not right here. However, if Bitcoin does close this next 4-hour delta below 91.28, which we are pretty much at right now, then that will naturally fall through. And to me, it's actually the 21 exponential moving average, this yellow moving average right here, that governs price action. As long as we're below there, I do look for the death cross to play out. And seeing as they all have negative slopes on them, well, that would suggest that this is looking interesting, we'll say. Interesting to say the least. And I'm going to get rid of this trend line right here. We're fucking doing Jesus toast all over right now. let me make this as clear and simple as possible, because sometimes it can actually be that way. Going over to the daily, what do we see here? We do see that Bitcoin's still kind of bouncing off the 55 exponential moving average, but does not look strong to me. And more importantly, with the advent of Friday's closure, this is really to be interpreted as our next lower high in a series of lower highs coming in from 10,000 right here, or just above 10,000 right there, 9,900 right here, 9,700 right here, and then more recently at about 9,300. So as long as we're below that from a daily perspective, the bias boner, at least for myself, is to the downside. Of course, this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, but that also comes up with another counterpoint to it, essentially, in the sense that, whoa, my camera's all weird. What's going on there? It's like slow motion. That's strange. Anyways, looking at this right here. So, as long as we're below there, yes, the bias is to the downside, but that also means that it gives a nice edge to the upside as well. If we do take out this high, then obviously it's not going to be our last little local high, and I'd be looking for a move to the next liquid zone on a short-term time frame, which I have plotted out somewhere right around about 9,600-ish region, which is essentially the same thing that we've been looking at on spot price action as well. But there's multiple things going on here. For the people who've been keeping a keen eye on the 10 simple and the 21, yes, we have got the bearish cross of them. And more importantly, that cross happens and gets fully confirmed while putting in a high simultaneously as well. And now they're starting to diverge, saying that the trend is strengthening to the downside. That's all coming along the same information that daily Stokes are still angled to the downside. Now they will be hitting very likely this trend line right here, which has been holding in a lot of the lows since late April, it looks like. So it does seem to have a good history. And I'm sure that a lot of people are going to say, but Krown, we have a falling pizza, and that means up. No, I do not trust patterns in stochastics. I do trust supporting resistance. That does seem to be that does seem to work quite well. But that also suggests that if Bitcoin does fail to bounce here and does head back down below and essentially get stuck into the bearish control zone, we will very likely stay there for a while. So this is kind of like a do or die situation. And as we wedge ourselves into this region, we're very likely to get resolution. I mean, it gets infinitely more likely as we kind of move on through it without actually breaking, below the quarter mark or above the 35.5 mark right there. With this current posturing. Looking at the daily RSI, do we have anything of particular note here? Potentially hidden bullish divergence if things really got, well, no, this is a daily, I'd be measuring this point right here and this point right here if this does confirm as a local low, but this will only confirm as a local low if Bitcoin does get back above this high right here, again, 9,300. So if that were to happen, regardless of whether you consider that hidden bullish divergence or not, I would actually argue against it just because it looks like continuation on a 2-day. More importantly, in fact, the 2-day had a pretty abysmal close yesterday, but we'll get to that later. But either way, if that were to happen, I would be kind of targeting the same area regardless at about 9,800 and maybe 9,900, depending upon where we kind of come in at. But overall, as long as we're below that, I'm not looking for anything like that to happen at all whatsoever. That offers up a trade on both sides, so you can take the opposite trade of that, or you don't even need to have an opinion of where it's going to go. Just a nice risk management point and an entry. That's it. And obviously position management as well. I mean, that's the 3 pillars of trading, I suppose, in the most basic sense. Obviously, it's a lot more complicated than that, but if you don't have at least that, then good fucking luck, man. Good fucking luck. So looking at this right here, a couple of ways of doing this as well. Obviously, this will confirm fully as a local high if Bitcoin does take out this wick low right here on 1st of July, which is all the way down to 89.50, and that will initiate the next move down to the 8,700-ish region where our last kind of prior low was. So all these things are working together. Of course, historical volatility percentile is absolutely crushed beyond belief. I mean, this is outlier upon outlier upon outlier of a situation, meaning that technical analysis and volatility doesn't work. No, just kidding. It does, and I can tell you volatility does. And anytime that I've doubted anything like this, it very much will humble you with an even more phenomenally big move. I mean, that's essentially how these things are programmed. So when it comes down to it, a low read like this going on for a longer time, obviously it's less and less likely, but it does imply that the longer that it goes on, the more and more violent the breakout or breakdown in this case would be. So again, direction's not implied for that when we actually do get expansion, but the next move very likely to be pretty cock shattering, if you want to call it that. Obviously, following up on the daily jewel cell signals, I know a lot of people took it off the CMEs. This was probably actually even a better signal right here on 9th of June, suggesting a sell right around about 9,600. Bitcoin actually did take out that high for a second, all the way to 9,750. But after that, that's kind of where we are right now, and I do still look for that to kind of play out here. I don't think that it's fully played out just yet. Looking at the 2-day, I think that this one's rather problematic as well, because if you're looking at a 2-day, we are already in the process of reversing the trend here. We have a high, we have a lower high, we have another lower high. That's 3 lower highs. 3 times does make a trend, but it's nothing without, well, something on the other side, of which we have low, higher low. But what's this over here? This looks like, unless if Bitcoin takes out the high of the last 2-day dildo at 93.90, which on spot price action I think is like 93 maybe. Yeah, 93 even. A little bit of an easier number there. This is looking like continuation, and coming back down to your last prior, what was your last higher low already is problematic from a trend perspective. So again, same thing here. I'm looking for the 55, which also lines up perfectly with the last prior actual low from this consolidation. And if we do come back down around there, I would be looking for a bounce on the short and medium term timeframes. But at the end of the day, that really starts to mark this off as distribution rather than accumulation. Trend is down, volume is on the sell side, and a reversal would really be in orders for the higher term timeframes, and that's when we can really start to target some much more nastier downside moves. Now, I'm talking about all this stuff kind of in advance, and I need to be very careful and go back to kind of like where this is reminiscent to me of where we kind of were at in 2018, back around here. What do I mean by that? Well, essentially, the bias was to the downside. I mean, Bitcoin was essentially, obviously putting in lower lows and lower highs, but the actual breakout point, it played around for so fucking long here, so fucking long. This was like the boringest 3 months ever. I mean, technically this is pretty fucking boring here too, but that one was something that I remember, and I think that probably a lot of people remember here, as well as a lot of people were probably around during that time. And essentially, it's just following that same trend. But until we actually have the actual major breakout, there's still not that flushing of the toilet, so to speak, to happen. And where does that point happen? Essentially, well, you can argue a few different ways. I would argue that it's probably already happened. It's just when you're looking for like the major flush, it's likely below this prior low right here on a daily closing basis at 8,700. If you want to be super conservative, you'll probably use 8,550 right here for this low, all lined up with some pretty important major moving averages, the 200 exponential moving average of particular interest right here. And as you can see on the daily, I mean what is this? High, lower high, lower high, lower high, and potentially another lower high right here, especially if we take out the low side of that 8,900 tick that we saw in the early morning, or I guess the late evening hours, I suppose, when that was closing. And then same thing on on daily for spot price action. So daily Stokes are going to cross back down again, and this is after a very quick snake that we saw from 3rd to 4th of July. Which did suggest a little bit of upside, but quickly switching around back to the other side, over the weekend, which tells me that the real direction here is well on the same side that you see right now. And looking at the lows, yes, we do have a low right here. Yes, we do have a low right here. The second that we make another low, that's three lower highs and 3 lower lows. Not good. Looking at daily jewel, again, following up the signals here, decent one right here, very good one right here, continuation, and perhaps lining up for another continuation after a very anemic bounce off of this fib. That's not good enough, or at least it's likely suggesting more downside here. What else do we want to say? Is there anything on daily RSI? We don't even see the same sort of potential hidden bullish divergence on daily RSI, which is kind of funny. So, or maybe not funny for all the bullahs out there. Sorry about that. Bitcoin's still going to 200,000, whatever the fuck they say. Red dots, red dots, red dots. There you go. The cognitive dissonance that will interpret anything as fucking hopium is so interesting. It's so fucking interesting. I'm very much interested in human psychology myself. By the way, I'm actually gonna be starting that channel, I've started recording videos for that channel, which I'll probably release maybe in like a month or two. So I'm actually gathering a lot of trading related type of occurrences that are related to that, but I want to apply it in a more broad sense because, well, I just feel like there's more things to be said about that. Anyways. Okay, cool. Let's go over the 12-hour. What's the 12-hour looking like? 12-hour Stokes are, of course, down as well. We hit the same trend line that we spoke about a couple days ago, right here at right at the edge of the of the bullish control zone, rejection, and back down again. That is not good. Now, yes, we do have a competing trend line on the bottom side right here, and and while like I said, I don't believe in formations on Stokes. I do believe in supporting resistance. I would also say that this likely implies that we do have a test down around here. Especially if you do see it fall through the edge of the bearish control zone somewhere right around here, which we will actually know by the end of today. Looking at 12-hour historical volatility percentile, again, saying the same things here, but this is contraction phase that is really coming to a major conclusion relatively soon. And you can also see that the 12-hour 200 exponential moving average is getting price action rather well here too. And even further than that, this is a cross that I don't talk about as often, but it does seem to matter quite a bit with Bitcoin, and that is the 12-hour 21 and 55. You can see that you do get a few snakes around here and there and some bad signals. Although, did this one actually turn out to be bad? No, it did briefly cross right here, but for the most part, it does get the long-term momentum rather well. And what do we have? When it crossed the upside right here with the lower period above the higher period, good. That's Bitcoin going from 69 to 10,000. When it crossed the downside right here, that's Bitcoin going from 9,000 to 4,400. Maybe not always going to have that good of results. Over here, great one again from 73 all the way to 10.5 that is. Over here, great one to the downside from 88 all the way down to 66. Obviously this one right here was a bad one, although it did give you, if you traded this one perfectly in hindsight, which pretty much impossible to do, but still an okay enough move to trade 7.5% to the upside before reverting it back down for the really good signal. And for the people in the TA program, you know why this one was not going to work out here anyways. Great signal right here, going from 10.3 all the way down to 7.3, $3,000 move, 30% in percentages. And again, same thing over here. Even with these not so great signals, or less than perfect, they actually still do give you a decent enough edge to trade. And that's kind of my point for getting like the long-term momentum. And what do we have right now? We actually do have a pretty good one right here, being retested multiple times on the 21. And guess what? It's the same thing as the 4-hour death cross. As long as we're below the lower period moving average on this one, especially, I look for this to play out. And seeing as it maintains a negative slope while still, continuing the downtrend, so to speak, right now, with momentum velocity is also pointed down, I would have to be having my bias boner very much in the bearish court. Looking at the 12-hour Stokes, we will see them remain to the downside as long as Bitcoin price action is closing below 91.20-ish region. Now, that is deathly close to kind of our last little, what do you want to call this, like your last lower high right here? I mean, you could make the argument for it, especially if we get continuation of the downside, but we don't have that just yet. So it essentially just gets, shoved out the way if Bitcoin can go back above there. So what am I, what's the picture that I'm painting? We'll look at where it is, right around the 21. Funny how these things work out together. And if Bitcoin does close back above there, not only would it loosen the grips of this kind of algo selling program right here, but it also turn around the momentum as well for that time frame. And then we perhaps have a nice local low here overall. And I'd be looking for a move, like I said, to about 95.50, 9600-ish region, especially if Bitcoin can close a 4-hour doodle above 92.50, or just trade above 9300. Doesn't matter the time frame or closure, just trade above 9300 would be good enough for me to target that move another $300, maybe $400 higher. But for right now, as long as we're below there, I don't really see any real reason to be anything resembling bullish as pressure is to the downside. The only things that are making me somewhat bullish is the fact that traditional markets still have strength, but I haven't even checked on them today, so we'll see what they're doing a little bit later. Going to the very lower time frames, of course, 4-hour right here, we do have the same sort of crosses available, although they are less. Hey, what the fuck? You bastard. My major moving averages are gone, bastards. 4 hours still following the trend lines as well. And what do you know, 55 is slowly but surely kind of walking it down. And actually, I'll get rid of everything else right here just so that we can really zero in on these. Because I do think that there is technically a lot to be said about it. Death cross happens right here. We get a test to the 200 right here, get a test to the 55 right here, and you can see it be walked down all these major moving averages on this time frame. And this is why I do focus quite a bit on the 4-hour, because it does seem to be the lowest time frame that holds a decent enough amount weight with price action that it seems to offer up a pretty damn good edge. I mean, just back testing the last few golden crosses and death crosses. Yes, fake outs do happen, of course, just like anything. Well, nothing's fucking perfect, but it does seem to get it more or less well, and I'll let you kind of make that decision for yourself. But as long as below the 55 and especially the 21, pressure is onto the downside. And what do you know, as far as 4-hour Stokes go, we're actually pointed up right now, so not bad. Maybe there is a little bit of hope at the end of this gloomy tunnel. I don't see anything of interest on 4-hour RSI. No divergences to be found here. Just kind of like smack dab right down in the middle. What about 4-hour Joules or anything here? Really floaty. Yeah, it's at a major decision point essentially. 3-hour, what are we seeing here? More or less the same thing, although 3-hour Stokes are up as well. So that's, we do have some good things. 2-hour Stokes up as well. Hourly Stokes cross into the downside. But let's see what would be needed to keep the momentum up to the upside. Hourly needs to close above 90, so that's literally where we are right now. Bi hourly needs to close above 89.50, looks rather likely. Triple hourly needs to close above 89.50, looks rather likely as well, and that's also kind of like around your last spike low. In 4-hour, same thing, 89.50. So, as long as Bitcoin's above 89.50, momentum will remain to the upside on these timeframes. Save for the hourly, it needs to close kind of above where we are right now, but it's still just kind of following the trend essentially. So using this high right here at about 91.50 on a 4-hour closure, and then 92.50 right here on a 4-hour closure, or wicks actually probably work just as well in this case, just because things are the ranges are so close. I don't see any real advantage to trading this range. Of course, that's just my personal proclivities. Don't let my shortcomings as a trader influence yours. You know, you can have your own shortcomings. Let me have mine. But, you know, I'm certainly not a perfect trader, of course. And I want to be very deliberately clear with that. So, you know, I'm just sharing why I think the way that I think so that you can take it and you can say, this is something that I agree with or I don't agree with, and go fuck yourself, Krown. Because that's what you should always say. You should always say, go fuck yourself, Krown. It's just a healthy thing to say, you know? It's just a healthy thing to say. Let's see, what do we have on the 10 hour showing about the same thing as well? 90-80. Yes, we get that. Okay, all right, let's go to our other chart here. You know, I like I said, I don't really focus on this too much, but of course there is hidden bearish divergence here on weekly MACD histogram between this point and this point, printing a slightly lower high, and essentially as long as we're below, well, the problem with this is that it's really the 20 simple that you'd be targeting off of a read like that. And 20 simples all the way down at low 8,000s, by the way. Stoic RSI, kind of a meme indicator in my opinion, but overall there is something to be said here. Whenever you do see that the weekly Stoic RSI does get above the critical zone for either territory realistically, and then comes down below, that's usually going to mark the high before another major pullback. It works better on Stoics actually, so I'll just focus on that, which I'm curious to see if we actually did see it come back down. Yeah, we are seeing it happen right now, but this is not confirmed actually just yet. It could be that we do see a bounce along this level, and if Bitcoin is going to have a bounce, it does happen at this level. That's why I'm actually very much interested in price action right now, because it is essentially going to be forced. It's going to be forced because if Bitcoin does close this next weekly Stoic below the critical level, we're very likely to see, you know, an actual pullback emerge from it, like 30%, extremely likely. I shouldn't say extremely likely, but very likely. And on like the outlier-ish end, maybe 40 to 50%, although I think that that's less likely, but can certainly happen. You know, last time that we had a read like this was back on over here, marking the $14,000 high before all this. That's a nice 50% pullback right there. Time before that was $20,000 high right here, 70% pullback almost immediately, but again, a little bit of an outlier there. And we got this guy right here, 31%. You know, we've done this a million fucking times. You already know where I'm going with this, man. You already know where I'm going. 36% right there on a closure basis, 45% right there. Again, a little bit on the bigger end, 35.5% there. Not good. 34% there. And another 37% there. So, you know, you can kind of see that par for the course is somewhere between 30 and 40% off the last prior high. And if we were to kind of shave that off, that actually put Bitcoin at around 7,500, which is very interesting because 7,500 is actually the measured move if you are looking at this as a Wyckoff distribution top right here. As it's pointing down towards 7,500-ish region, 7,400, you know, give or take $100 is all the same on a big move like that. That is also the 0.5 fib and also, you know, a major historical horizontal. However, I do think that there'd be bounces along the way, and I wouldn't even be looking for this to emerge at all whatsoever, as long as Bitcoin is especially above 8,700. Technically speaking, although I actually do think that the damage has already been done. In the next move below 8,900 probably does catalyze it. But again, trading level by level is the way that I've kind of stayed safe the most in trading land for my career. And I intend to stay in that area as well. And you also notice that naturally, if Bitcoin does falter below 8,900 again, we will see the 2155 cross the downside here. This is being put on alongside the next, what would be a high if that were to happen, and very likely switches up the trend for the foreseeable future, just like you saw right here to the upside, just like you saw right here to the downside, just like you saw right here to the upside, just like we saw right here all the way to the downside. Actually, that one took you all the way through. And that would, well, Bulas, there's always next year, right? Jesus Christ, man. I'm just curious what are going to be the titles what are going to be the YouTube thumbnail titles if Bitcoin does go back down to like 7,000? How are people going to rationalize that one? Curious. I'm very curious. All right. Let's see. What else do we have? Just lost my train of thought. Did we want to go back to the 2-day really quick? 2-day also looks, the 2-day on spot actually also does look like it's potentially putting in a higher low. It's just that we don't really see the same thing on CMEs, so that makes me skeptical as I do weigh the CME chart a lot higher. Two day Stokes are actually way down there as well. So if there is one thing saying that, hey, right now it's actually not the time to be getting bearish, it would be the 2 day, because we will actually see the momentum oscillators turn back up to the upside tonight. That is at 8 p.m. Eastern time if it closes above 90.50, which, keeps us in the range once again. So fair enough. There is counterpoints to this, but should I remind myself something that we saw back and over here? You might think that that's a good read. However, just because it's down in this region does not mean that it's destined to come back up to the upside. This read right here was actually right in early November before this going all the way from 6,000 to 3,000. So fair enough. And I'm not necessarily of the opinion that if Bitcoin does break to the downside here, it's going to have like a fucking 50% move. No, I actually think that it probably ends up being an opportunity, because long term, it's very difficult to be bearish on a chart that looks like this. From a monthly perspective, and a lot of the other tools that I look at from a monthly, as we've been showing from the last couple of weeks of video, suggest that it would be unwise to get super bearish. Although a move to low 8,000s or even mid to low 7,000s is very much would not really put all that much in jeopardy from a long-term perspective, especially as long as Bitcoin's above 6,500 on a monthly closure. It can be viewed as okay. But let's go check out traditional markets and see if there's any sort of like a legitimate bias to keep on here. Now, I did say that weekly had a phenomenal close in NASDAQ futures here. So while I do think that a small pullback could bring it back maybe down to like 10,150, maybe things even get a little bit crazy all the way down to 10,000 even. But overall, I'm looking for new all-time highs coming into this week. I would think that a pullback down to those levels is going to be an opportunity. This is a phenomenally bullish chart, closing on new all-time highs, and well, this is essentially what it was like to be a crypto degenerate trader in 2017, where it just goes up no matter what. I mean, fuck, man. You got to check out that guy Dave Portnoy on Twitter. He is absolutely hilarious, and he's basically making a mockery of this in the same way that a lot of degenerate traders in 2017 made a mockery of altcoins and getting rich as fuck on that on paper. Problem is, for a lot of people, it does stay on paper. So what I would say is, and I'm not trying to be your dad or anything here, but if you are in the traditional markets and you're enjoying a lot of this, actually, I do think that there's more to come, actually, but keep in mind that paper profits are just that, paper profits. They are not real. And you can always jump in later, and you don't need to get 100% of the move in order to make a decent amount of money. In fact, you don't even need to get 69% of the move. 69% is pretty damn good measure to go for, though. If you get 69% of the move, that's pretty damn good. Anyways, weekly oscillators are still looking good here. Weekly RSI just make it to the bullish control zone for the first time in almost half a year since February. So this is all looking good to me. I want to see historical volatility percentile contract over the next year, really, and that likely comes with an up phase. I'm bullish on traditional markets, especially as long as it is above 9,900 from the macro perspective. I have zero reason to be bearish as long as we're above 9,900, and from the short term, as long as we're above 10,300, it's still bullish. Looking at E-mini futures for SPY, not as obvious of a chart, but still a very, 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 very good close last week. And I would say macro, I am bullish as long as we are above about 2975 region right here. This is operating as a local low, and seeing the strength in NASDAQ, I'd be looking for a target medium term somewhere back into the 330s, and short term probably back into the 320s. It's looking good, man. It's looking good. Like I said, yeah, no real reason. I mean, could it come back down to 310? Yeah. Could it come back down to 308? Yeah. Could it come back down to 302? Yeah. But like I said, as long as it's above 2975, I look at this as, just an opportunity for the long term. It looks very, very good. Looking at gold, gold's interesting here because it did put in a little bit of an indecisive dildo to close out the week last week. But overall, the monthly is still very much strong. If it did have a move back down to 1730, 1740, I look at that as an opportunity. I do still think that ultimately this run gets up above 1800, maybe even 1900 before we have the next big consolidation, likely to the downside, and then decide from there. But gold's still looking good to me. Let's go check out euro dollar as well. I do want to start to kind of shift into Forex, because Bitcoin's just boring as fuck, and this is a lot more interesting. Euro dollar looks like it actually wants to stab right back up to the highs at 113.5. Yeah, weekly's looking interesting here. It is setting in a higher low now, isn't it? But until you get that weekly closure above 113.75, it is still under pressure. But I do think it's going to give another try there this week, and if it does break above, then that can actually be a legitimate breakout. I mean, there's really not much stopping it from 117.5 if that were to happen. Even though I actually have been bearish on this, looking at this as an overall lower high. Technically speaking, I should hold on to that for right now, but it is looking promising here. I want to check out Dixie as well. Now, keep in mind that this market is in a very strange posturing. I'm very long-term bullish on Dixie. If I'm looking at the monthly, I'm incredibly bullish long-term. But what does that mean for the short term? Can short term, medium term, we come down to 93, 93 and a quarter? Yeah, possible. I mean, we come all the way back down to 91 and a half. That'd be a fucking phenomenal opportunity. But as long as we're riding that area long term, I mean, it's long term very bullish. I'd actually be long term bearish on euro dollar. However, short and medium term, it's gonna have a chance here to really buck the trend for the next few months. So long term game here, of course. Let's go look at dollar yen. Dollar yen looks like it's consolidating. I think dollar is getting ready for a big move to the upside here, back up to 114 over the next few months. Looks good to me. What else do we have? I need more fiat shitcoin tickers. Maybe I'll add them over time. Alrighty, let's go check out Mr. Buterol. How did he close out the week? Mr. Buterol was looking like one of the more bully-ish ones. Buterol looks good. Actually, kind of looks like that chart of euro dollar. It looks like it wants to take another stab towards 243. So that's a really interesting thing to see, because this one's obviously a lot more healthy looking on a weekly schedule. On a daily, still kind of riding that same sort of downtrend as long as we're below 231 and a quarter. Above 231 and a quarter, I would look for a move back up towards 243, 242 region, back up here. The question is, if Bitcoin breaks down, do I look for that to lead Buterol, or do I look for Buterol to lead Bitcoin to the upside? That's a really good question. So I'd have an alert right here that likely correlates with Bitcoin back above 9,300 as well. And if we do see that, I would look for a move up here. And by the same token, Bitcoin's easier to the downside, so I would be looking for Bitcoin to kind of give the signal on that. It's a little bit more difficult on a daily. On a weekly, still, Jesus, man. It really would not be too out of order here to pop back up to 9,700, but does that imply a breakout to the upside? No, not necessarily. Still got some work to do, man. Still got some work to do. It's the same thing as what we've been seeing before. Anyways, how long is this video? 36 minutes. 36 minutes, too fucking long, baby. Too fucking long. Alrighty, let's go back down to lower term time frames. Or actually, let's go over here and check out probabilities. So I'll keep on using 9,300 for the gatekeeper for a short and medium term move up to this area right here. I'd even make it a little bit higher, more towards like 96. And to the downside, we can probably use yesterday's spike low if you want to get super conservative, 8,800. But really, a daily total closure below 8,900 very likely does send this down, or to the next lower levels at 8,550, 8,600ish region overall. So let's see what we got here. I'm gonna keep 8,900 to the downside, and I'm gonna put 9,300 to the upside. And keep in mind the slope of the rings actually did once again kind of flip to the downside here. So trending aimlessly is going to once again put the probabilities in the downside's favor. Remember yesterday we actually saw a flipping of the probabilities in favor of the upside, meaning that the upside probabilities above 9,300 for the short and medium term was slightly higher than what we saw for the downside long term. But again, that's a short term move, or sorry, medium term move, because $400, $500 is a medium term move versus potentially $1,000 plus move to the downside. If they're even within the same realm, like where do you think the asymmetry is? It's obviously on the fucking downside. Duh. Rhetorical question, sorry. Anyways, we once again see it flip to the downside now, though, and this is again for the long-term downside continuation versus just a medium-term upside, $300, $400 move, which would make things look a lot better to the upside, granted, and that can obviously build another case for the upside. But 34.25% versus 28%, respectively, downside versus upside. And in this case right here, that's very, very high. I mean, anything above 16% is like relatively high, but because Bitcoin is in one of those long form consolidations, just, wasting time really. So yeah, wrapping this one up now, I would essentially boil it down to this: as long as Bitcoin's below 9,300, I'm overall bearish, or wherever this 9,300 on a wick, 9,250 on a 4-hour closure. If Bitcoin exceeds that level, then yes, I would look for a move back up here towards about 9,600, give or take $50. And very likely I'd look for a short-term pullback from there, and then probably does get a try up to this blue box over here, 9,900, 10,000. If Bitcoin does clear this level, it's the same thing as what we've been saying for the last couple months. I would still target 11,000, probably plus. To the downside, below 8,900, next levels for continuation is 87, probably a small bounce there, and 8,550, probably a medium-term bounce there. But realistically, I don't see too much holding Bitcoin up to the 382 at around 8,150. I think that is one of the levels on the weekly as well. Yeah, the 55 is coming in around that level actually. And while I would be looking for another decent bounce there, keep in mind that that would also confirm this as a Wyckoff distribution top, and the measure move for that markdown phase would be the 0.5 at 7,500, with potential to go down to 6,900, down around here around the 618. So with all that said, I do want to wish you well. I want to wish you the best of the best and the happiest of the happiest, and I sincerely mean that, because right now it's like I feel like every morning when I wake up, there's something new, crazy to look at in the news or around the world, which well, we're all in this one together, man. So you know what? I don't know what to say about it, but all I can say is, well, I'm listening, I suppose. Take care, and until next time.